All right, so it's no secret that we are in a drought. We've had a devastating year with our snowpack, and I think now more than ever, water conservation is so important, particularly outdoor water use. Here in the city of Lakewood, we do have a goal of reducing water use on a total capacity basis and then a per capita basis as well. And Many of you may be aware that the city of Lakewood's structure for water service is pretty unique. While we get most of our water supply from Denver Water, you are primarily served by individual water districts. So you get your bills from different water districts, not the city of Lakewood. And those districts are called special districts or master meter districts that are in charge of the infrastructure to bring you the treated water that Denver Water provides. So no matter what service provider you have here in Lakewood, generally we know that outdoor irrigation accounts for about 50% of all potable water use. So that's why here in Lakewood we have such a strong focus on figuring out how to optimize efficiency for outdoor water use. One of the programs that we started the past few years is a partnership with Resource Central that's really focused on individual households. We have an incentive program that offers $25 discounted garden in a box, which are like pre-assembled low water landscaping kits. We offer free sprinkler evaluations that's open to HOAs as well. And then we have a $750 incentive discount on lawn replacement services. Additionally, we are a sponsor of Resource Central's free WaterWise yard seminars. It's a great opportunity for you as a resident to learn about all sorts of different water-related landscaping seminars. Two that I wanted to highlight. May 6th, they will be hosting one about pollinator-friendly gardens, and then May 19th, how to manage your yard during drought. In addition, on our outdoor water website, you can access a DIY lawn conversion guide as well as a residential outdoor water conservation guide. So why do we need a separate webinar just for HOAs? I think that HOAs are a really unique user of outdoor water, and that's why we wanted to have a separate specialized message for all of you today. HOAs are unique because they control a large share of outdoor water use because of all the common areas. So there's lots of large portions of shared landscape and a lot of turf grass, probably in your own HOAs as well. There's also large centralized irrigation systems. So when we talk about making efficiency upgrades, because the scale is so large, we can kind of have a larger impact when we address efficiency for these larger systems. HOAs also have shared budgets and contracts for landscaping and design and maintenance work. So that can really improve the ROI for a lot of the work that you're looking to do. And then finally, from a community-wide education standpoint, HOAs have a unique way to funnel information to its residents. I know a lot of you are interested in both irrigation improvements and efficiency as water-wise landscaping. Just to give you a sense of the potential water savings that you can get from making improvements. With traditional turf and inefficient irrigation, a typical HOA might use 1 million gallons per year on outdoor water. And after applying some smart irrigation techniques, doing assessments, and then looking at low water alternatives to turf grass, that can lead to 30 to 50% water savings. Um, some of the benefits include lower water bills for you, reduced maintenance costs, greater drought resilience because you're putting in more drought resilient landscaping, enhanced curb appeal, and then stronger community leadership because we know residents, leaders of HOAs are really invested in the way that common areas look and feel and are part of the community. So to frame our discussion today, we have a couple poll questions for you. The first one is about barriers to implementing irrigation efficiency in your HOA. So we should see a poll pop up. And you should be able to answer.
It's not popping up, Jeff.
All right, let me give it a shot on my end here. Bear with us for
Oh,
a
I
second.
got it. I got it. Is it there?
There we go. Yep. So as I mentioned, we have a couple poll questions before I hand it off to Morgan to kind of frame our discussion today. The first one is, what are the main barriers to implementing irrigation efficiency in your HOA? And we will share the results in a few seconds when we get some more responses. Well, we're seeing a lot of responses about cost of services, so that's good to know. Education as well. And we'll give it a few more seconds for this poll. All right, Chrissy, let's end this poll and share the results. So vast majority of you say cost of services is a major barrier, so that's great to know. 36% residents need more education, and then HOA managements have limited support as well. So that's great to see. And then our next poll question. Chris, you'll have to stop sharing this poll and then move on to the next one. The next poll is, what are the main barriers to replacing turf grass with low water alternatives in your HOA? And just give us a second to pull that up. There we go. What are the main barriers to replacing turf grass with low water alternatives in your HOA? So the choices are residents want to keep common area turf grass. HOA management has limited support. Your landscaper might not have experience with turf conversion. It's a really unique skill set, we think. And then, of course, budget and financial limitations. We're seeing a lot of responses, once again, about budget and financial limitations. And the desire for residents to want to keep turf grass in their HOA committee. And Morgan will chat about that as well. What the difference is between functional and non-functional turf grass. What areas of grass are needed. You know, we're not asking HOAs to rip out all their turf grass. That's not the intent of our water conservation measures today. All right, Chris, why don't you end the poll and share the results? So yeah, almost all of you cited budget limitations. Um, Residents desire to keep common area turf grass as well. So that's great to know. All right. Well, with that, I will hand it off to Morgan with Denver Water.
Awesome. Thanks, Jeff and the City of Lakewood for having me today, and thanks everybody for joining us today. So my name is Morgan Hopkins Crawley. I'm a community relations senior specialist with our water efficiency team. And one of my areas of focus is working with HOAs and commercial properties and customers on landscape transformation and irrigation efficiency projects. So you all are my people, so welcome. I did want to start off echoing what Jeff said. So as hopefully you all know, we are in a drought. We had historically the lowest snowpack on record coming out of our winter, or if we can call it winter this year. And so March 25th, Denver Water declared a stage 1 drought. And the full details of that resolution are on our website. And so we can provide that as a resource following up. But in a sense, we are going down to 2 days a week watering for turf grasses. with overhead irrigation and broken up by different watering days based on even on addresses for residential and then multifamily commercial properties. So we have a lot more information and resources on our website regarding drought, what that means, what that looks like, what Denver Water is doing on our end to mitigate supplies and other resources. So I encourage you to definitely check out denverwater.org/conserve to learn more about it. You'll notice too, we have the use only what you need. So if some of you were here 13 years ago when Denver Water used this campaign for our last drought that we enacted, we're bringing that back again as another effective marketing tool to get people engaged and learn more about the drought and what that means for us. So one note I will say to echo Jeff again, we have drought enforcement policies and programs around our drought restrictions based on where you're at. Master meters do not have to follow our drought restrictions. They can choose to enact their own. They can choose to follow Denver Waters, but we are not overseeing drought restrictions or drought programming in those master meter districts. So it is really important to understand who provides your water for your community and what set of rules that they have in place. And if you need help figuring that out, we can definitely get there. Next slide, Jeff. So as we dive in to talk about these different types of projects, I will echo that we're going to be talking about both irrigation efficiency projects and water-wise landscape transformations. But what I always like to do is to level set with folks that I'm talking to about these projects, because there has been a lot of confusion and misconceptions surrounding these types of projects, what water-wise landscaping is. And so I just want to start off with what we're talking about and get on the same page. So a water smart or a water-wise landscape. We're talking about using water efficiently in the landscape. So whether that's through effective irrigation or plants that are climate adaptive, native, provide four-season interest, habitat for pollinators and wildlife, and then also require little supplemental irrigation beyond what our quote unquote average precipitation is. And so, as I'm sure a lot of you have heard the term xeriscape used, it was actually coined by Denver Water back in the 80s. And there is a lot of misconceptions about what xeriscape is. It's derived from the Greek word xeros, meaning dry landscape, and a lot of folks think that's just rock and cactus. So we have transitioned to using different terminology like water smart, water-wise landscapes, Colorado-scapes, to really show that we're looking at landscapes that are beautiful, that thrive in our semi-arid climate, and that provide all of these other benefits besides just reducing our water use. And to really emphasize, it's not just rock and cactus, although cactus can have a place in these landscapes. So moving forward, when we're talking about landscape transformations, whether that's using perennial shrubs, ground covers, or things like native grass, that's the image I want you to hold on to and not one of a rockscape. Okay, next slide. I also want to touch on a little bit of myth busting, because I feel like HOAs can get a bad rap sometimes, for better, for worse, in these types of landscape projects, or what type of rules and requirements that they have for their residents. So there have been several House bills passed over the years protecting water-wise landscapes in our HOAs. So whether that's on a common ground area or it's on the individual residential area. And so there are state statutes that do not allow HOAs to prevent these types of landscapes in their communities, and removing any legal barriers or covenants that would be put in place for residents wanting to pursue these types of projects. So I want to encourage you, if you haven't looked over your bylaws in a few years or reconnected with your residents on what those are, I would encourage you to look over those and make sure that they align with all of the House bills that have been passed. I will provide in the resource guide that we send out afterward more of what those House bills are beyond the ones listed here. But just to make sure that you're up to date, your community is up to date, and that everyone's on the same page. That way there's no misunderstandings about what types of landscapes are allowed in your communities, and then also what you as a community can also pursue in some of those areas that you're wanting to transform into different types of landscapes. I will caveat that you must comply with local municipal development code. So whoever governs that for you, I believe that would be the city of Lakewood. You just want to make sure that any transformations that you are planning or designing comply with that local code, in whether that's irrigation upgrades or plant material and for those landscape projects. Next slide. So where to get started? We will cover quite a bit of content in here. And so we will be sending out follow-up email for with resources that I mentioned and additional information. So I don't want you to feel like you have to furiously write down everything that I'm saying. Along with the recording, we'll be able to provide this in a number of different ways for the resources, but also our contact information, Jeff and I's, will be provided at the end. So I'm always happy to answer any follow-up questions or set up some additional meetings. That way we could really tackle anything that maybe you want to dive deeper in on these topics, or you just have follow-up questions after this that kind of spur as you digest the information a little bit more. So where do we get started? I will say that these projects can be very time intensive and overwhelming. There's a lot of things to consider. And if you are the only one that is the champion for these types of things, it can definitely feel very overwhelming. And so that's really where we're going to focus today, is getting those questions in place that you need to answer, talking about timelines and different considerations that are going to be unique to every community. So this will definitely look different for each community. And these questions will be answered differently depending on your goals, your budget, and then what your community desires as well. So I've got the list of questions on the following slides. And again, we'll have these sent out, but let's get started in talking about those and digging into it. First things first, what are your community goals for an outdoor water efficiency project? As Jeff mentioned, we are not talking about ripping out everyone's grass. I think that's another misconception when we talk about initiatives from water providers or groups that want to take out turf. It's really, we're looking at that non-functional turf. What just sits there and is watered? What's never walked on? What's never used in a recreational capacity, whether that's kids or dogs, but it's just simply sitting there and being watered. So I think that's a really important thing to address with your community, and getting feedback on what they're interested in, and really understanding that if you have a space for recreation or a park, that's not the area that you're talking about, but maybe you're talking about the median or a curbside landscape, which is the space between the sidewalk and the street, that really doesn't have a purpose to have grass in a small area. So to kind of keep that mindset as well while we talk about these things, is thinking through those areas that you could upgrade for a water-wise landscape, or those areas that you are keeping for recreation and turf grass, how we could upgrade those to be more efficient with the irrigation. And when we're talking about community goals, obviously the community is a really important part. So we want to make sure that the goals are being set with their input in mind, and making sure that there's plenty of open conversations and community input meetings and education happening before starting any of these. And so talking more about some of those goals, do you have high water bills and really want to focus on reducing that outdoor water usage? And like I said, that grass not being utilized for recreation or event spaces. Do you want to beautify your community? Encourage more pollinators and wildlife habitats? There's a lot of great initiatives out there to bring back a lot of our pollinators that have maybe gone away from the urban or suburban settings. And so your common spaces or landscapes are great little ecosystems that can do that. It doesn't have to be on a grand scale to bring back a lot of that habitat and pollinator into your neighborhoods. An important component too, another question to ask yourself is, what does your water usage look like? Do you look at your bills regularly? Do you know who your water provider is? I think that it's a little tricky sometimes with the Denver water as the overarching water provider, and then we drill down into master meter districts and read and bill and total service. And so really understanding who your water provider is, who gets those water bills. Is it the property manager? Does someone on the HOA board also have access to those and review those? And having those looked at a regular cadence to make sure that you're not seeing spikes in the wintertime that would indicate an indoor water usage issue, or your spikes just in the summertime, which would indicate obviously outdoor water usage. So making sure you have access to those records and that data, and understand who you can talk to those at the utility about as well. Also understanding what type of meter you have. Irrigation only meters, those would be pretty easy because it's only activated for your outdoor summer months. But you could also have combined meters in some situations that have indoor and outdoor water use. So understanding if that's the case, could you look into possible sub-metering and removing that irrigation usage onto a sub-meter so you can just isolate that and really dig into just your outdoor water usage. And also, like I said, peak usage in the summer goes along with outdoor water usage and really helps you narrow that focus into where you need to dig into efficiencies. Next slide, Jeff. Okay, so irrigation system efficiency upgrades. So irrigation efficiency is the best step regardless of whether you're going to do a landscape transformation project or if you just want to focus on irrigation. Water is going to have to be applied to the landscape in a landscape transformation project, especially during that establishment period after the plant material has just been in the ground. So whether you're going to keep your Kentucky bluegrass and want to just focus on honing in your system to be more efficient or doing a landscape transformation project, you've got to start with irrigation. I don't want to say it's the low-hanging fruit because it still takes time and effort and money to figure out where those inefficiencies are, but it is something that may not take as much planning as a landscape transformation project. And so it's something that perhaps you can tackle sooner than something like a long-term project in your landscape. And an easy way to understand what's going on with your system is to get an audit or an assessment. So these can be done by nonprofit groups. I know Resource Central does some offerings, like Jeff mentioned, for their Slow the Flow audit program. But there are a lot of great irrigation consultation companies out there, or your current irrigation or contractor may be able to do these as well. But it's really critical that these are done at least once a year, if not more, beginning of season, end of season, to really understand what's happening. So at the end of the day, this is just bits of plastic in the ground. And so we do have to take care of it. We do have to check in to make sure that all the parts are working correctly. As part of an audit, you will likely get a zone map, as they will visually inspect each of the zones in your system, which turn on for different areas of your system, and look for broken heads, leaks, areas of pooling water to indicate an underground leak, misalignment of heads, things like that. And so having that visual inspection, you can also get a zone map out of it. So that way you actually know where things are turning on in their system in accordance with the scheduling on the controller. Another important aspect is scheduling, knowing what your schedule is. And so having an auditor can write down, what is currently in your controller, and then perhaps also make suggestions as to what it should be if it's not in accordance with local watering rules, but also just grossly overwatering, for watering every day in the middle of the day. That's significantly inefficient. And so those things will be caught in an audit if you're not regularly looking at those things. And a couple other things is measuring precipitation rates. This is how much water is applied to the landscape from your irrigation heads. And so that can, decrease over time as wear and tear happens, as heads get knocked by mowers or dogs, and then ensuring that head-to-head coverage where heads are throwing water to meet the other head. So that way all of the plant material is being watered by that overhead irrigation. So a lot of things that can be caught during those irrigation system audits that, you're not noticing when your systems come on, hopefully at 5 a.m. in the morning before the day gets started. And as a result of having an audit, you will get a report of all of these inefficiencies and recommendations on what you can do to make your system more efficient. So a big one that's been popular over the years is smart irrigation controllers. These are really a water management tool when used correctly. They use weather station data with on-site parameters and vegetation information to create a schedule that factors in whether it's going to rain or it's too windy or when was the last time the grass was watered. And so it's a really efficient way to manage water in a system that can be utilized. I will say that it is not going to be an effective tool if your system itself has not been brought up to the efficient standards. So if you still have broken, leaking heads, things like that, a controller is not going to help with all of that water being wasted. So it is a great component to utilize, but only if your system is also brought up to those efficient standards as well. Next slide. This is a fun one. Do you need to hire a qualified contractor? There are a lot of great contractors in the landscape and irrigation industry, a lot of great groups that are providing consistent education and resources as things develop as far as efficient technology and more emphasis on water-wise landscapes. But we still have folks who are just, let's just keep the grass and keep it as is and mow and blow and we'll move on with our day. And that's fine too. But if you're looking for someone to really understand the nuances of irrigation efficiency and landscape transformation projects, there's some great resources to tackle and dive into to find some accredited professionals to help you drill down into getting these projects done successfully. I have listed a few certification databases here, the Irrigation Association, Qualified Water Efficient Landscapers, and then the Associated Landscape Contractors of Colorado's Sustainable Landscape Management Program. That was a mouthful. These will be in the resource guide that I send out or that we send out afterward. But these will help you find professionals who have taken classes and courses and studied more about these types of projects to really help you, to help guide you to get them done in the best way possible. And then we want to make sure, obviously, that we're getting several bids and references from these companies to ensure that they know how to do these types of projects, and then conduct an interview. So we'll look at the next slide, Jeff, to look at some of the questions that you might want to ask. So for an irrigation contractor, it is an interview. You're having someone come into your community and help you manage the spaces that you care about and that you utilize. And so you want to make sure that they understand your community goals And in asking, are those audits part of their standard contract? Or if they're not, can we include that? What experiences do they have with smart irrigation controllers? Or have they done managed large landscapes where they've had a significant reduction in water and based on whatever strategies they've implemented? Do they know about local watering restrictions or rules by whatever water provider you have? And then do they handle new installations, or are they just maintenance focused, or do they do both? So I have a list, or I have another resource that I'll be sending out from the EPA's Water Sense program about example contract language that you can incorporate into a contract with these folks. And so I would definitely recommend looking over that if you're looking for a new contractor. Next slide. And looking at it from the landscape lens, asking simply what their definition of water-wise landscaping is. Because as we talked about, there are misconceptions and misunderstandings around this. And I've been told by customers as well as landscapers, these landscapes are ugly and we don't, we don't like them. And so then we kind of have to drill into, well, why don't you? And what are you actually thinking about when it comes to these landscapes? So asking what the definition is that they have, or what types of plants would they install. There's a lot of great plant databases that support water-wise landscapes available for Coloradans, and so lots of great resources for you out there to support when asking these questions. Another is, how would you maintain and irrigate this landscape? It is going to be very different from a mow and blow situation that a lot of folks take with traditional Kentucky bluegrass. And so we want to make sure that they understand that nuance before taking on the responsibility of caring for your community. And then also, have they done these projects before? I think the best, case or reference they can have is to actually show you pictures and contacts that they've worked with before on doing these exact types of projects. Next slide. So you may be the only champion in your community, and if you are, I applaud you. But I think one key piece of this is creating a dedicated project leader or team. This doesn't have to be on the HOA board. It could be someone from the board and other, grassroots members of your community. But it really does take someone to champion this, or a group to champion this, to get it across the finish line. It's important that when establishing a team or a project leader, you are including property manager, the board, and your landscaper. Through working many years with different communities on these projects, being on the same page is critical. I think we all recognize communication can be the downfall of any project. And so we want to make sure that everybody's on the same page from the beginning, but also delegating responsibilities and points of contacts for different tasks. If you have a team, can somebody handle the irrigation? Can somebody handle the community education aspect or paying the invoices? So that way if you have that capacity, it's not all on one person, and less likely for things to fall through the cracks. Timelines. As I've mentioned, and you probably know, these projects take time and energy and resources. We were earlier talking about how irrigation can be a low-hanging fruit. That could be something that maybe only takes a couple months to get in place, whether that's scheduling an audit with your current contractor. It may take a little longer if you're finding a new one and getting a contract in place. Versus a landscape transformation project, we really encourage folks to start planning about a year out, if not more, especially when you're talking about budgeting and having those conversations. A lot of folks get their July bills or their June bills, and they're like, oh, we should do one of these projects this year. And oftentimes I'm like, well, let's take a step back and really dive into the project planning for this and what all it takes. And it really giving yourself a year plus is doing yourself a favor to make sure you're checking all the boxes, getting all the permits, getting everybody on board, and making sure you have a clear plan before really just jumping into something. And I always advocate for breaking up into achievable phases. Landscape transformation can be done in phases. Start small, start with a demo project to really showcase it to your community and get that buy-in that you want for doing larger projects. So taking that timeline and really breaking it out into achievable pieces is critical. Next slide. Okay, funding. We did talk. I did see in those poll results, the cost of service. Unfortunately, it is likely not to go down for a lot of things. Water costs are likely not to go down. These costs of services, especially with the fast track trending of water-wise landscapes, or even smart irrigation controllers, it has kind of picked up in its popularity, and thus there are associated costs when more people want something like that. So part of your planning process and having that year time plus to really plan out these projects is what is your funding source. Looking at these projects or these irrigation upgrades as an infrastructure investment is another great way to tackle this. If you're doing master planning for your community, include these projects in there so that way it is a foundational piece of what you're doing moving forward. But it also, thinking about your budget and what you can achieve, that may dictate what you can do. For irrigation efficiency projects, maybe you're not ready to spend quite a big sum on a new controller, but you can focus on replacing heads and fixing breaks and leaks to make sure your system's efficient before you jump to a big project like that. Or maybe you want to look at some of our beautiful native grasses for your landscape transformation projects, because those are more cost effective when establishing from seed. So, things to think about when you're in that project planning phase and what you can really achieve based on your budget. There's a really great resource from the Water Now Alliance and Western Resource Advocates that I'll send out that actually talks specifically about these finance options for landscape transformation projects. And it's these options that I have listed here. It goes into more detail about what they are and how to use them. So I'll just touch on them briefly. Rebates and grant programs. Obviously, the City of Lakewood has some resources, and as well as Denver Water, that you can utilize for doing some of these projects. Looking into your financial reserves, your annual reserves, or your costs or your savings account. Pursuing a special assessment or debt financing. So again, I have a great paper that goes into those in detail, but really trying to look at different avenues that you could utilize that best suit your community. Next slide. Okay, so I apologize if I went through those rapid fire. I really want to make sure that I'm leaving enough time for questions. But for tackling those project questions, it's a lot. So I'm sure that felt like a lot. But next steps would be to really get that group together that wants to tackle these projects and start looking at those questions and really seeing where you're at in the process. I'm sure a lot of you are at different phases, whether you haven't even thought about it or you already have a project. So really getting that group together and that champion and making sure that your property manager, your landscaper, and your HOA board are all on board. I really recommend starting with an irrigation efficiency audit. As we've said several times, it is a great place to start whatever track you're going on for your community. And if you haven't done one before, then you definitely should do one. And then putting that timeline together with a clear path for milestones and completion, with the caveat of allowing for delays and project changes. Going into a lot of these projects, the wrenches get thrown in so quickly, whether that's plant availability, parts being ordered, getting a landscaper who can actually do the project in the time frame that you want the project done. So making sure that whatever timeline you're beholden to, that you are allowing for that wiggle room. Next slide. Okay, here are just some snapshots of some of the resources that I've mentioned to you from the various groups. And again, we'll send out this resource list to the group so that way you guys can dig into a lot of the gaps that I have left for you to explore further into the project questions. Next slide. And then another great example from the EPA, they have 4 or 5 different pages just dedicated to HOAs and these types of projects. And so I will link that also in the resource list. Okay, I will, I believe, end before we get to our last poll question on some Denver water resources. We do have a landscape transformation assistance program. So this is geared towards HOAs and commercial properties wanting to remove that non-functional turf grass and put in a water-wise landscape. So our funding for 2026 is closed, but I am meeting with groups to talk about 2027 projects, and that application will open up in September. And so we talk about a lot about project planning, and we go through all those questions in the conversations that I have with groups. So if that's something you're interested in, we will link that also in the resource list. We do also provide rebates for smart irrigation controllers and high efficiency rotary nozzles. And then our water budget program that we have stood up for the drought this year is another water management tool we're offering to large irrigators with a minimum of 1 acre in size to allow some flexibility in the allocated water use during drought. Next slide, I think, is the poll.
Yeah, thanks, Morgan. Before I move on to the poll, just to note that for the Denver water rebates, even though you're in a master meter district, the majority of master meter districts in Lakewood also allow you to get Denver water rebates. So if you are looking
Mhm.
at irrigation controllers and new nozzles, you more likely than not will qualify for those rebates. You can go on Denver Water's website to check exactly if your water district is part of that program.
Yes, thank you, Jeff. That's important.
All right, so before we go to our Q&A, we have one final poll question. How can the City of Lakewood and Denver Water best support your HOA with common area water conservation efforts? And we'll leave that open for a minute or so. And we're really trying to understand where we should be focusing our resources that are available to best help your communities to conserve water and understand what the barriers are for you. I'm seeing a lot of people click everything, so um, looks like there's some work to be done for sure in terms
That's
of
easy enough.
supporting resources. Yeah. So we'll leave it open for a few, maybe 10, 15 more seconds here. Then we'll share the results. All right, Christy, I think that's good. Let's go ahead and share those results here. All right, so the vast majority of you are interested in free consultations for turf replacement planning, which is right up Morgan's alley. And then a lot of you are looking for funding for turf replacement projects as well as irrigation audits. Very understandable. And then HOA specific education and communications. Great. Oh, I did not share those results. Sorry. Um, so you should be able to see the results now.
Yep.
All right. Well, we will move on to our Q&A. you should see a Q&A button under your Zoom control panel. So just go ahead and type in your questions and we will kind of go down the list and try and answer them. I will take this first one. So we have a question, is Consolidated Mutual a master meter provider? And the answer is yes, with a caveat that Consolidated Mutual also has its own water supply. So they are partially a master meter provider for Denver within the service territory here in Lakewood. Morgan, anything else to add to that?
Yeah, I will caveat that unfortunately, Consolidated Mutual, because of how their supply is set up, they're not eligible for our programs with Denver Water.
But if there is a specific program that you're interested in that Denver Water participates in or offers, I'd highly recommend you contact Consolidated Mutual directly because they want to hear from their residents and
Mhm.
customers as well.
Definitely.
All right, another question is it allowed to, are you allowed to test irrigation systems on non-water days?
Yes. So as long as the irrigation company or the staff is present when those are being tested, which I hope they would be anyway, you can water for short periods to test those systems.
All right, thank you. Next question. What programs are available for the Bear Creek Water District? I believe they are one of the master meter districts. I'm not sure if they participate in the rebate programs. I will say, while Morgan, if you're looking that up,
Yeah, I'm
um,
double checking.
yeah, uh, for our citywide incentives, it doesn't really matter what water district you live in. So our partnership with Resource Central, our incentives are available to any Lakewood HOA or resident. So that includes that discounted garden in a box kit I was telling you about, the slow flow irrigation assessments, as well as the $750 discount on lawn replacement services. So those services are available to anyone in Lakewood as long as you can show proof of residency there.
Yeah, and I'm not seeing them on our list of qualified water providers, but I can follow up with that person directly afterward to dig a little more
Yeah, and you can
deeper.
always contact Bear Creek Water District directly. I do know that they participate in a lot of the Master Meter District forums, but I'd recommend just giving them a call directly and seeing what incentives they offer. All right, and next question. What are the parameters to use drip systems in hand watering?
Yeah, so that's a great question. In regards to drought restrictions, the use of hand watering or drip systems can be done every day, um, just not between 10 to 6. So it does have that restriction of the time, so 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. But you technically can hand water and use drip irrigation every day. And I will in tandem say that that difference between the 2 day rule for overhead irrigation and hand watering and drip systems is drip and hand watering is subject, hopefully, if done efficiently, to less water waste. From from evaporation or for wind, and so that's why there's that distinction between limiting overhead irrigation on lawns to the 2 day a week versus allowing hand watering and drip systems to be utilized every day. So, because it can be confusing if you're like, oh, you can water every day. Well, we're hoping that when you're hand watering, you're using a nozzle with a valve on it, or if your drip irrigation's obviously not full of leaks and breaks and wasting water that way. So, just a little context onto that.
Thanks, Morgan.
Mhm.
Um, Let's see, we have a couple more questions coming in. I do want to pause and ask you a couple questions I have. Could you speak very briefly to your recommendations on hand watering for trees right now? And then also what watering looks like when you are establishing new low water landscape vegetation and native grasses. And then I'll go
Yeah.
back to the Q&A.
No, that's a great question. And information I'll definitely be providing in our resources list. So we were just on a call with the park people who does a lot of tree planting in the Denver metro area, talking about tree watering. We are not advocating for tree death. We definitely want to make sure that we are accurately watering our trees. That's important whether you're doing a landscape transformation project or not. So I have resources about hand watering specific gallons a week based on the age of your tree or the average age, if we obviously don't know the exact age. So I'm happy to share that information. And then great question on establishment watering. So typically, depending on the time of year we're planting, which is hopefully not, July and August when it's really hot, we will need about 3 to 4 weeks for establishment watering for water-wise plants. And the native grass establishment is a little bit longer. So we typically advocate for about 6 to 8 weeks for native grass establishment. And we have guidelines and establishment permits on our website if you are planting new plants to allow you that flexibility outside of the watering restrictions. But it is important to note that with establishment watering, we start out watering quite a bit the first week or two, but then we're tapering down. So we're reducing that usage as the weeks go on. So that way we're training the plant to basically get used to less and less water as they get stronger and more established in the landscape.
Great. And just to confirm, those permits or exemptions are would apply for anyone in the Denver water proper service territory, but if you're in a master meter district, you should really be contacting your own water service provider. Is that correct?
Yes, because there are that I'm aware of some that have different rules and some that aren't allowing new vegetation and landscapes, while Denver Water still is allowing when it's a new landscape to be watered.
Okay, and that leads into the this next question that we have. So, if I heard correctly, not all master meter districts provide services for the community. I'm assuming that's conservation related services. Why wouldn't a master meter provider offer these services for their users? Again, it's these providers are independent boards with elected officials, and so they are really in charge of their budget and how they want to provide services to the community. Morgan, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I would say it's likely a capacity thing. Even us at Denver Water see capacity restraints in what we can provide to customers. But not being a master meter, I won't speak for them. But from the outside looking in, I would imagine it's a staff and capacity thing.
Great. Next question. Is there any information collected summarizing average water use for HOA communities per homeowner unit?
Yeah, there's a lot of great information out that is localized on a national level as far as like per capita use or drilling down to household usage as far as like what an average household of four use inside and outside, depending on their landscape type. So I'm happy to include that in the resources. There is an average of like 40 gallons, ideally 40 gallons per person per day. But that's not talking about the outside landscape use. And so when you factor that in, it can be a lot more.
Yeah, I think one of the resources, and maybe the WRA one that Morgan shared earlier, does have case studies that include
Mhm.
the number of units within the HOA and how much water savings and how much water use they saw throughout their project. So that'll be a great resource. All right, next question. Can an HOA mandate no hoses allowed during a drought?
Great question. I would probably need to loop in our legal team as I know this has been a conversation that has come up that we've gotten. But to my knowledge, an HOA cannot usurp our watering restrictions. But again, I can follow up with that. I mean, obviously, if they're using a hose during 10 to 6, we don't want that happening. If that was the context of the question, but if you don't want hoses used at all, I don't believe you'd be able to usurp the watering restrictions of your water district.
Okay, thank you. Next question. Does Denver Water have an agronomist on staff?
No, but CSU Extension does. So I would reach out to the local. Are you guys Jeffco, right?
Yep.
Jeffco County, CSU County Extension, and I can link that in the resources. They're a wealth of information coming straight from CSU. So I highly recommend utilizing their services that are
Yeah, and
free.
yes, I was just going to say free benefit, great benefit for our county in Lakewood here. All right, next question. How little should we water in order to keep bluegrass dormant and not dead? We're looking at reducing water flow to an unused area. Would once a week work?
Yeah, this is a great question and a really good distinction in the question that dormancy is just sleeping. It is not dead. So if done correctly, the crowns of the roots or the crowns of the grass would basically go into a sleep mode for several weeks, but then be able to come back to life with more watering. So we recommend for Kentucky bluegrass roughly dormancy between 4 to 6 weeks, so a time period of that which would kind of align with the hottest time of the summer, and you can go down to as little as like a quarter of an inch of water delivered once a week to keep those alive. But I will link some turf dormancy stuff in those resources as well, as that is a great mitigation tool, especially during drought.
Great. I don't see any other questions in the Q&A here. So, um, you can see our email addresses here, Morgan's and mine as well. So if you have any questions, feel free to get in touch with us. As a reminder, we did record this presentation and it will be on our outdoor water website. I'll also include a link to our slides as well as the resources that Morgan mentioned and the link to this recording in a post webinar email, hopefully over the next few days. Thank you everyone so much for your time and your care about water conservation. We need everyone to be aware and being active about addressing this drought that we have. We know that water is so important to our community. So I really appreciate your time. And thank you so much, Morgan, for your expertise as well.
Great. Thank you guys so much for having me. Have a great rest of your day.